Together to give you the answers on the upcoming season. Why don't we introduce you some of those people who will give you those answers, including this guy next to me, our NBA insider at NBC Sports, Tom Haberstroh, our good friend Monty Pools, the NBA insider at NBC Sports Bay Area, all here ready to roll. And guys, what a wild offseason it was. Player movement all over the place. And as much as there could be question marks throughout the NBA, how much do we think, Tom, that the road to an NBA Finals must go through L.A.?
You know, the NBA is as wide open as I've ever seen it, considering all the player movement this summer. But I think it's going through L.A. And I think the teams in the Eastern Conference are thrilled right now because of the fact that they didn't reseed the playoff picture from 1 to 16. Because we know one of those teams is going to drop out on the road to the finals. But, man, the finals MVP in Clipperland, and then you got LeBron James and AD teaming up. I think the best duo is in the Lakers, but the best team is Clippers.
Monty, as wild as you've ever seen it?
Pretty much. I mean, you go back, you had the Miami Heat teams with LeBron and Wade and Bosh, and then that filtered to the Warriors, which Steph and Klay and Draymond, and then they added KD. So for the last decade, those are the two teams that you kind of figure were going to win this thing. This season, Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, Sixers. I mean, you've got options. And don't count the Denver Nuggets because they finally got some playoff experience last year.
Well, we've got options here on the My Teams app, plenty of them, and we're going to bring them to you today on our NBA season tip-off show. You know, for the last 5 years, Monty was talking about the West was pretty much been the Golden State Warriors. Well, not anymore. It is going to be a Wild West this year, and here with more on it is Kelly Johnson, who, by the way, hit 207 threes in her college career at Idaho, and 14-year NBA vet Brian Shaw. Brian, if you pass to KJ, you're not going to see it back. I promise you that.
You definitely won't. Yeah.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
The five-time NBA champion right here, of course, former not only guard but coach in the NBA. You know the Western Conference well, Brian. A lot of moving and shaking, as we've seen. Everyone's talking about L.A., but don't forget about Houston and, of course, Golden State, who has gone to 5 straight NBA Finals. Let's start with the Rockets, though. They shook things up when they added Russell Westbrook to James Harden. Those two thought they might go after a title in OKC with KD. Can they get it done in Houston?
Well, I think they definitely have a chance. You know, they basically swapped out Russell Westbrook for Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. And, you know, they've been there before. They've been deep into the playoffs. And so when you have that kind of talent, anything is possible. And those two guys can take over a game. They've both been MVPs. They've been leading scorers in the league as well as top of the assist leaderboard as well. So anything is possible with them if they can get it together in jail in time.
And we are going to break down their game coming up. Obviously, both guys like to have the ball in their hands a lot. Let's talk about the Golden State Warriors, though. Obviously, Klay Thompson, we've heard all the news. Steve Kerr saying he's not expected to play this season. KD is now gone, which means Steph Curry is back to being your #1 option on offense. You still got Draymond Green, and you got that coaching staff in Steve Kerr. You've got the pedigree and the experience. Everyone's saying this team isn't even going to make the playoffs. What do you say?
Well, I think that they're the champion until somebody knocks them off. Or, you know, they've been in a championship situation, and they have some of the players there that can get them back. Steph, obviously, is going to be a lot of weight on his shoulders. Draymond's been there, and as you mentioned, the coaching staff. Now it's going to depend on the addition of D'Angelo Russell and how fast they can bring these young players along. Obviously, it's an uphill battle for them, but you know, they have been there, they have the experience, and so let's not count them out.
Yeah, experience can mean a lot, obviously, in the NBA. All right, so that's the Western Conference. You know the Eastern Conference well as well, but let's go on to Philadelphia. You played for everybody, Brian. We won't go over your resume. Let's get to Brian Scalabrine and Mark Jackson joining us now, our Celtics and 76ers authorities. Obviously, gentlemen, a lot of movement out east as well. How do you see things stacking up this season?
Yeah, thank you. I want to start with KD and Kyrie. I mean, obviously we know that Kevin Durant's not going to play, but with Kyrie Irving, what does he do for a Nets team? You saw this team firsthand in the playoffs. Like, is Kyrie the guy that's going to push them over the hump?
You know, I think with the mixture of Kyrie, along with DeAndre Jordan and the rest of that cast of Nets players, I think they got a long shot of finishing the top 3, top 4 in the Eastern Conference, because Kyrie brings something that D'Angelo Russell do not do. He's a finisher. He's a consistent, proven finisher, and he's going to bring it.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Kyrie's one of the most talented guards, but you know, going from Kyrie leaving Boston to now it's Kemba Walker coming to Boston, you know, a lot of people are going to look at that matchup in and of itself and say, well, what does this matchup do? And now Kyrie's probably a better player. He's bigger. He can get to the basket. But in Boston, they're thinking, with now Kyrie gone, the rest of the guys are able to shine. So Kemba Walker, which he doesn't say anything bad about anybody, Now he comes in and it allows Jaylen Brown to do his thing. He allows Jason Tatum to do his thing. Kemba Walker, high-volume pick-and-roll player in Charlotte. Brad is using him mostly off the ball. You see plays like that coming to dribble handoff. So it's going to be really interesting the way that coach uses Kemba Walker. It's going to be very different than the way that they use Kyrie Irving. Now let's shift over to your squad, the Philadelphia 76ers. Yeah. So I was devastated when Al Horford left Boston, but I thought, what a perfect place for him if he wants to win a championship. Can he be the maturity, the rock that gets Ben Simmons to the level that he needs to get to and Joel Embiid?
I think Al has been an ultimate professional on every stop he's been. He's proven he could just be not just a leader on the court, but as well as often a mentor to Joel Embiid, who is one of the top stars in the NBA. Forget what that other survey said. He's one of the best players in the league. So having Al Horford in the locker room, sometimes Joel, because of his body and the way he plays, needs to take off a play or two or a game or two here and there. That's okay to slide Al Horford over to the 5, and he can command that middle spot as well as the length the 76ers have. This team has started the preseason with a smash mouth basketball. They want to play big, they want to play strong, and be aggressive. Without Horford in the lineup, along with Josh Richardson, that's going to mean a lot.
Yeah, I really like the addition of Al Horford. What you guys say, the championship goes through L.A. At the end of the day, it might go through Philadelphia. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
All right, guys, thanks very much. More from Brian and Mark in just a second. You know, when our NBA insider Tom Haberstroh hits Twitter, you hit back. He's already out with his NBA Twitter polls. First one, the team most likely to challenge the Lakers and the Clippers in the West. Fans responded. They like Russ West and the beard. They also like the new-look version of the Golden State Warriors. I like the up-and-coming Utah Jazz, a 5 seed last year with 50 wins. But the fans say the Rockets, except this one fan says, watch for a familiar team.
Warriors. I think that the rosters are very reminiscent of the 2014-15 Warriors. Plus, Russell and Curry and Thompson are better than they were then. So I picked the Warriors.
All right, I like it. You got to be true to your school. How about LeBron, though? He may dispute that opinion. Oh, man, he is ready to go tonight. He was tweeting, "'Twas the night before Christmas feeling right now. Excitement on high beams." KJ, Brian, more on the new look Lakers and Clippers.
All right, Brian, so you were the associate head coach of the Lakers last season, LeBron James' first year in L.A. Did not make the playoffs. So what did they do? They added Anthony Davis, one of the most talented players in the world. I know LeBron has played with a lot of talented players, Dwayne Wade to be won championships, of course, but never maybe a player with his skill set and size. How tough will this duo be to stop in the NBA?
Well, it's going to be very tough. And not only did they add Anthony Davis, but they added some good shooting on the perimeter. Here in transition, you see LeBron drawing 2 defenders for an easy drop off to Anthony Davis. There's going to be a theme that we're going to see develop throughout this video. So here, Anthony Davis comes down. He sets a good, solid screen on LeBron to free him up. What that does is makes Anthony Davis's man have to step up to stop LeBron's penetration. Now it allows for another easy pocket pass, drop off for a dunk for Anthony Davis. LeBron is a basketball savant. And what you're going to see when the Lakers really, really need a basket, they're going to always go to this 2-man game with them. Here, they force it to the baseline. The defense on the weak side is not pulled over, crowding the paint. Another easy pocket pass for LeBron to Anthony Davis for the dunk. And that's going to be the theme that you're going to see all on. Now, all of these are different looks. Here, the defense tries to get a little bit more aggressive, try to get the ball out of LeBron's hand. Another quick, easy pocket pass. The defenders step up and help uphill, which you never do at this point. And what does it do? It allows for JaVale McGee to get an easy lob dunk at the rim. That's going to be the theme, the common theme that you see throughout this season. And I think for them, their health is going to be critical in how they do, especially coming down the stretch.
And for the new head coach, Frank Vogel, a challenge in a sense, though, to still make this all work with so much talent. And you do have a JaVale McGee, a rim runner in him, and Dwight Howard. Do they need a third star, though, to emerge?
I don't think so. I think, with the shooting they have that's going to create the spacing on the floor, you have an extra coach on the floor in LeBron. When Rondo comes, you have another coach that's going to man up probably the second unit there. So it's going to be really, really tough to stop them.
Okay, let's talk about that other L.A. team, the Clippers. Yeah, don't sleep on them because this guy, the Finals MVP, Kawhi Leonard, coming home, leaving the Toronto Raptors after winning the title. Paul George coming over, combining another dynamic duo now. George is going to be out for the first 10 games or so. So it will be the Kawhi Kawhi show, and he's going to have to carry a lot. But this is a talented Clippers team around him, obviously.
It is, and one of the things you just mentioned about he and Paul George both being two-way players, they're going to create a lot of steals to be able to get transition baskets and easy things on the other end. I think that he's going to come out super aggressive at the beginning of the season while Paul George is out to establish himself on that offensive end. And he can do so many things. He can pull up from three. He can post up. He can play through contact, as you saw on that last play. You can put him in pick and roll. If you sit back and the center is not up, he can just stop and pop on the spot, knock down the three. And so, there's nothing that this guy can't do, and it's no coincidence that he was able to go to Toronto last year and take that team to a championship that had never experienced that before. Here again, too much of a gap between himself and the defender. He just raises up and shoots right in his face. And so when he establishes himself at the beginning of the season and Paul George comes in and you add him to the mix, how are you going to stop that?
Everything looks so easy for Kawhi Leonard, and you have two of the best two-way guards in the NBA. Defensively, with Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell, this team is going to be tough.
They are, and then you add the coach in Doc Rivers, who's been there and done that. He has a championship caliber coach on the bench with him as an assistant in Ty Lue. So, this team is covered in every area.
Yeah, so everyone predicting the title is going to go through LA. The question is, which team will it be? Pretty good options right there. All right, Brian, let's go back to you, Coach.
All right, thanks, KJ. Thanks, Brian. Let's stay out west and take a look at the Blazers. Last year, the Portland Trail Blazers were a 3 seed in the West. What can we expect this season? Let's bring in Blazers reporter Jamie Hudson from NBC Sports Northwest. Jamie, players have high expectations for their club. Why is everyone else forgetting about the Portland Trail Blazers?
That is a good question. And to say the players have high expectations is pretty much an understatement. At Media Day this year, whether it was veteran Anthony Tolliver or Damian Lillard saying that that's the focus, is to win it all this season. But going back to your question, why has everyone else forgotten about the Blazers? That's kind of what happens, right? The Blazers are used to this, whether it's the Vegas odds or the national media. They'll kind of count the Blazers out. They're maybe not going to make the playoffs this season. And hey, I get it. The West is so stacked. You guys have already talked about some incredible duos in the West, whether it's James Harden and Russell Westbrook, or you can go down the list. But here's the thing. The Blazers, from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, they blew up their roster that got them to the Western Conference Finals. Yes, it's true. They have 7 new additions, but they also addressed the perimeter needs, whether it was getting more shooters or getting better ball handlers. So the Blazers really feel like they're in a good position to get it and to win it all this season.
Jamie, you think about the Blazers, you think about 2 guys, obviously. Dame Lillard, C.J. McCollum. But it can't be all Dame and C.J. How can the Blazers exceed expectations this coming season?
I think a lot of it's going to depend on the relationship between Damian Lillard and Hassan Whiteside. While Yusuf Nurkic is, of course, still rehabbing his left leg injury, that relationship between Hassan and Dame is going to be real key. And I think you're going to see a lot more Lob City and Rip City this season with Whiteside. And then another key piece will be Zach Collins stepping in. He's going to be starting at power forward. The Blazers are really high on Collins and Anthony Simons. Those are 2 guys that'll have a much bigger role this season. So the Blazers are definitely expecting a lot out of those 2.
All right, Jamie, then give me the key for the Blazers to be a surprise team of the Western Conference this season.
Okay, building team chemistry early is going to be so crucial. Like I said, with 7 new guys, that's going to be something that they're going to need to get going early because they're on the road a lot to start the season. In fact, 13 of the first 20 games, the Blazers will be away from Moda Center. So when you're road tested, you got so many new guys, team chemistry is going to be crucial.
Great insights, Jamie Hudson. We appreciate those, and we'll be following you with the My Teams app all NBA season long. More to come on our NBA tip-off program coming up in 8 minutes. Warriors head coach Steve Kerr joins the show to give an update on Klay Thompson, and he'll explain why Steph Curry is at the top of his game. But for now, we need more in the East. Back to Philly we go on those beasts of the East, guys.
At it seems like a two-horse race. It does seem like it's Bucks and Sixers. You can add the conversation with Boston, Toronto, even Indiana. But really, it does seem like a two-horse race. You know, Milwaukee loses Malcolm Brogdon, but they still got the reigning MVP, Giannis. In your opinion, why aren't the Bucks the prohibitive favorite going into this year?
I believe it's just too much on Giannis' shoulders. I mean, he's 27 and a half, almost 28 points a game. He's going to need to average that plus to get to where he needs to go. But I really think this team is surrounded by veteran players that are pretty good, but they only have one superstar. And with that being said, Giannis is the reigning MVP. A lot of people going back-to-back MVP. I just don't think it's enough around him to get the job done in the playoffs. You lose a 90, 50, 40 guy in Brogdon and expect to replace him and it's just easy? I don't think so.
Yeah, are you picking that because if you watch the last 4 games against Toronto, the Bucks, the wheels absolutely fell off for them. Now, we expect Giannis to get better. He still has a long way. I know he's the MVP of the league, but we do expect him to get better. Like, does that leave a taste in your mouth? Like, I just don't know if these guys have what it takes, like Middleton, Bledsoe. Are these guys that have to prove to get to that level?
I agree with you 100%. To me, I feel it's like this team in the playoffs, like you said, they fell apart. But Kawhi made them fall apart. You know, when Kawhi got switched over to Giannis, it was difficult for him to get his buckets. You know, so with that being said, who else is stepping up? If Chris Middleton's number one thing to his game is he's a great shooter. If his shot's not falling, can he create enough to create 20, 22 points a game consistently? I think this team is built to win a lot of regular season games, but when the playoffs get tough, I don't think they're going to get it.
The switch to the Philadelphia 76ers, a lot of talk about Ben Simmons and his maturity, Ben Simmons and the shooting, Embiid, and the diet and staying healthy. Like, when you look at these guys, there are some holes in the past. Are those holes now disappeared?
To me, I thought the biggest hole, the biggest elephant in the room is Ben Simmons going to be able to shoot the three-pointer. Is he going to shoot the jump shot to open the floor? That's yet to be determined. Yes, we see a lot of video in the summertime, but can he do it consistently throughout the season? I think he can. I think he's going to come in looking to shoot. But with that being said, you got Josh Richardson, you got Tobias Harris. They've added some pieces. This young guy coming off the bench in the Tipoff. I mean, they got a legit starting 5 with a great rotation guys coming off the bench that's going to contribute. Joel Embiid is going to bring his A game. A lot of people are counting him out. He's the best player. He's the MVP candidate. The GMs don't think so. But this guy is coming to improve a point. He's not only the best defensive team player in the NBA, he's one of the top 3, top 5 players in the NBA, period.
Yeah, very dominant when he's on the floor. Embiid is a guy you guys have to continue to watch for when you're talking MVP or best player in the East. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Brian. So Scal and Mark both had their say. So do the fans. Our Twitter poll right here, Tom Haverstraw put it out there. Which East team is best positioned for the #1 seed? And you said the Milwaukee Bucks at 37%, predicting the Bucks will repeat as the top seed in the East, with Philly and Boston also in the mix. All right, back here with Brian Shaw. A lot of different opinions on who's going to win the East. Let's talk about the Celtics and 76ers challenging the Bucks, and we'll start in Boston because Kyrie Irving is gone, special player, but enter Kemba Walker, who maybe has been overlooked a little bit out in Charlotte the past 8 seasons. He is a great scorer. He can create. So how does he fit into Brad Stevens' offense?
I think he fits seamlessly. You know, here's a guy who's a bona fide scorer and has been that since he's been in this league, and playing for Brad Stevens and coaching against him, he likes a lot of misdirection. Lead the defense one way, bring it back the other way. Here you see Kemba Walker driving the closeout, 5 Charlotte defenders basically in the paint, and he's looking off the young defender Miles Bridges with his eyes. Gordon Hayward finds a window. Being the willing passer that he is, he's able to hit him for a wide open 3. I think you'll see a lot of that with them driving the closeouts off of those misdirections. Here, Colin Sexton, a young defender, makes the mistake of not keeping his body on this guy, Kemba Walker, who we just talked about, who can score. And doing that makes it an easy pop shot for him. He just stops behind the defense, reads what the defense gives him, and knocks down this open 3. And so Kemba, being the scorer that he is, the willing passer that he is, I think is going to fit right in there with Boston in their style of play.
He's also a great leader as well. We know Kyrie Irving said he didn't lead very well in Boston. He has some young talent around him. Jason Tatum might benefit maybe from a Kemba Walker.
No question about it. You know, as you mentioned, Kyrie did admit that. I think he had a lot of things on his mind. I think he was already in Brooklyn even when he signed with Boston. So, you know, now Kemba gets to come in there, establish that leadership position with this team, fit in. And I think it's going to do wonders for this young Boston Celtics team.
Now, a lot of people are thinking the 76ers might win the East for good reason. Jimmy Butler is gone. J.J. Redick. GM Elton Brand made some bold moves.
Yes,
he traded for Tobias Harris and Josh Richardson, then stole Al Horford away from Boston. So defensively, all of a sudden, the 76ers team with those Twin Towers and Joel Embiid looking pretty good, and in transition offense as well.
Yeah, and, you know, they have guys that are pretty much interchangeable, versatile, with size and length on the perimeter. Here, Tobias Harris at 6'9" can stay in front of the guard coming off the pick and roll, and then they're going to, you know, you see within 5 seconds they're down, converting it into offense on the other end, and that's what you're going to see with this team. They have some great defensive additions, even though they've lost Jimmy Butler and J.J. Redick. Here you see Josh Richardson coming in behind the play, another perimeter player that's 6'6" with long arms, active hands. They, you know, no hesitation once they get this turnover, turning it into offense again on the other end. That's going to be a theme, and I think the biggest improvement that you're going to see in this Philadelphia team this year. Al Horford here, you see him playing two, basically. He's bluffing and stunting at the ball handler and also covering the man in the corner. And because he has his hands and arms out, he's able to get a deflection. And then, you know, like I said, they're turning it into easy baskets in transition on the other end. So the shooting that they may have lost with J.J. Redick, they're going to make up for it with what they get in transition. Al Horford again, here in the passing lane, being able to stunt and get back, sniffing the pickup from the ball handler, and getting out in transition and finishing himself. And so these guys also, they play unselfish. They know that Ben Simmons is going to find them, get the ball to them. Now, Matisse Thybulle, another, you know, their draft pick this year, 6'5", long arms, more known for his defense than anything else. You know, so they're covered around the perimeter, and then with the addition of Al Horford and what he's going to bring to them in the locker room in terms of leadership and just professionalism, you know, these are great pickups that Elton Brand did, and he's already in the running, I believe, for Executive of the Year.
Al Horford does everything well. Now you have two of the most skilled big men in Joel Embiid and Al Horford. You mentioned the veteran leadership. That is going to be key for this young 76ers team. So going to be interesting to see how this whole Eastern Conference plays out.
For sure.
It's taken 40 years, but once again, the Bays team is the best team. The Golden State Warriors are the 2017 NBA champions. The Golden State Warriors have won 3 of the last 4 NBA titles.
There's a new NBA champion, and it's a team from Toronto, Canada.
We'll be back.
I wouldn't bet against us.
Well, the Warriors are coming off their 5th straight NBA Finals appearance with 3 NBA titles over that time. But things are changing in the Bay Area as the team moves to San Francisco with a very different group. Steve Kerr sits down with Warriors reporter Logan Murdoch to talk what's new and what stays the same with the Dubs roster.
One guy you do have that is familiar with Steph Curry. You said that he is about at his peak right now. What have you seen over the first few weeks, and whether it be in practice and in games, that makes you feel that way?
He's just been brilliant on the floor, and then off the floor, he's as comfortable as I've ever seen him in terms of his conditioning, his peace of mind, his self-awareness, where he is now. In terms of his age, his experience, it's matched his skill set. Like, this is, you know, there's kind of a sweet spot for every great player, and he's in his sweet spot. And so we're incredibly lucky to have him and to watch him play every night. I know our fans are excited to see him, and they should be. He's just an unbelievably entertaining player.
His splash bro, Klay Thompson, is tore his ACL in the finals. When do you kind of expect for him to come back, and how do you hold down the ship until he does come back?
Well, I mean, you have to look at it realistically. You know, ACLs, I had an ACL in college, and I missed a whole season. And generally, an ACL for a basketball player is a full year recovery. And if it's a full year for Klay, that puts him out for the season. You know, we've kind of left the door open in case the rehab goes perfectly and the doctors say he can go. But you know, the reality is on April 1st, that's the 9-month mark. He got his surgery on July 1st. April 1st is 9 months post-op for an ACL. It's unlikely that he's going to play this year. So we have to understand that. We have to prepare our young guys to fill that role behind him, and when he gets back, whenever that is, hopefully these young guys now are developed and in the rotation and ready to really be contributors on a playoff team, and we can get better.
D'Angelo Russell, he's been an all-star. He has had success at a young age in this league. What do you think of him, seeing him up close, and also what he can do this season for you?
Well, I'm excited that we have D'Angelo. He's an unbelievably skilled basketball player. From a passing and shooting standpoint, he can shoot from deep, well beyond the three-point line. He can shoot off the dribble on high screen and rolls. He can spot up, and he's an unbelievable passer. So we've seen in the preseason, we've seen D'Angelo make spectacular passes in the pick and roll. He's a smart player. He understands the game. So he's a huge addition for us, and we're lucky to have him.
What do you think about the Western Conference, and where do you guys think you shape up in that?
Well, we'll see. I think for our team, I don't even look at the West and say, all right, here's where we stand.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what we have yet. We haven't even had a regular season game. We've had 5 exhibition games. Our rookies are trying to figure out which way is up. So the rest of the West is brutally tough.
Yeah.
The teams you mentioned, plus Utah, Portland, San Antonio is always good. Dallas coming back with Porzingis. It's scary to be in the West. We've been blessed over the last 5 years to have the talent that allowed us to, get over the top every year. But it's tough. It's tough. A lot of great players, great teams.
Logan Murdoch with a great job of the My Teams app, and the headline there, and this could be devastating for the Warriors. They could be without Klay Thompson this season. That's according to Steve Kerr. Monty, you're as close to the Warriors as anyone I know out there. How does that change the Warriors season, hearing what you just heard?
Well, I think for them, they've always looked at it that way. They haven't come out and said it until Steve said it just recently. But before, they were saying that we can't count on Klay coming back this year. We have to play this season with what we have. If he comes back, great. If he doesn't come back, so be it. I think for them, they're looking at this season, there's a lot of development going on. Rookies, new guys. Alec Burks has yet to play a game, barely practiced. Glenn Robinson III. So they know that they are not a reasonable championship possibility there. But they also think the playoffs might be there for them if things break right. They have to keep Steph healthy, they have to keep Draymond healthy, and they have to get something from somebody else who maybe you don't expect anything from.
Yeah, I think he's tempering expectations right now. Throwing a little wet blanket on the situation and keeping expectations low. But here are the facts. The average return to play from an ACL tear is 11 months, 330 days, which would put it back, in May. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned Kristaps Porzingis in that little bit there. Kristaps Porzingis tore his ACL in February of the previous season, and Klay did it in June. So Kristaps did not come back after that, and I think that's what Steve Kerr is saying is temper your expectations on Klay. And I think everyone else on the team might say, you know what? This is not as much shoulder and burden on our shoulders right now.
Yeah, they could get there, but it's going to be tough to get to the playoffs.
That's tough news for any Warriors fan, but there still is that other splash brother, Steph Curry, two-time MVP in the NBA. He had a 40-point game in the preseason, but how much more of a load can Steph take on?
That's the big question. I think the biggest variable in the NBA right now is what that number 30 does this season. How many games does he play? How much load management is he going to see in the regular season this year? How many games are he going to take up? Because in the preseason, he was on fire. He averaged 39.5 points per 36 minutes, more than a point per minute in the preseason. And you know what? We forget, in 2016, he led the NBA in scoring before Kevin Durant came into town. So if he's going to win the scoring title, and they win, let's say, 50 games, I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation.
If he gets the scoring title and 50 wins, he's got to be there. I think the scoring title is possible because he's going to have to shoot. He's going to have to deliver some offense. But I think the 50 games, that's going to be a reach. Steph is used to playing with Klay Thompson, and now with D'Angelo Russell, it's a totally different kind of player. So I think when you look at Steph, he's going to get a lot of attention this year. Teams are going to basically say, you know what? Don't let Steph beat us. Anybody else, fine, but don't let Steph beat us.
Maybe a little physical with him as well.
Oh,
bump and
yeah.
grind him just a
No
little
doubt.
bit. Make
No
it
doubt.
tough and try and wear him down. You guys have had your say. Now let's let the fans have their say, because Tom puts out that Twitter question, and then you have the answers for you. Who will win the NBA MVP? Your answers are as follows. You like the odds of the former two-time MVP. You have Giannis there as well. The beard is in that thing. Steph did win the two-time MVP. You like that answer, but the fans say Curry has a shot at another one, and we heard from some of you as well on this year's winner.
As a student at Stanford, I have felt the Golden State Warrior craze, and I think Steph is unstoppable. He's definitely going to win it.
MVP has to be Joel Embiid. He's going to be on the best team coming out of the East. He's going to average 28, 13, 4 assists, 2 blocks. Joel Embiid will be the NBA MVP.
I got to go with Steph Curry. He's a player for the ages. He inspires his teammates, the fans, terrorizes the opponents. Steph is definitely going to be the MVP.
All right, well, you had it from the fans. They're loving Steph Curry. I happen to love the others, right? I'm taking the field on that one. But for the Eastern Conference, I think it's a two-horse race. Like, who do you got for MVP?
MVP, I'm going to go with Joel Embiid. I think he has to play more than 64 games. His numbers are going to be about the same, because I think Al Horford helps him with floor spacing, takes some of the load off him defensively, so he's able to play more freely. And I think he's a more mature Joel Embiid. You know, he's off of Twitter this summer. He actually focuses on other things. I think he's coming in with a killer mindset. I'm going with Joel Embiid. And listen, Giannis is going to have a great year, but I think the MVP is going to be the best player of the Eastern Conference, and that's going to be Joel.
Yeah, I have to agree. If you look at what Embiid's capable of doing, and he plays in short minutes, let's say he plays 31 minutes a night, maybe 32 minutes a night, he is an unstoppable force. The rest of the league is going small. When you go small, you cannot stop this guy. By the way, you can't stop him with big players. Good luck stopping him with small players, but it's going to be really important for Ben Simmons to have a good year if Embiid's going to win MVP. But what about Giannis Antetokounmpo? I mean, this guy is unstoppable. We know he still has more to grow in his game. We saw a little bit of jump shooting. Does he have a chance to repeat as two-time MVP?
He does, because he's going to carry the load of Milwaukee Bucks on his back, literally. This guy, when you watch him work, when you hear about the stories after the game, you know, like his performance, that's okay, I'm going to keep my uniform and go back to the gym. You love that. And I think he's got a fan base that's going to help him a lot when it comes to the media voting. But Giannis is going to finish second in the East. Joel Embiid is going to finish first, and I think you got to go with the best player on the best team. That's why I think Giannis might get knocked out this year.
Yeah, and I happen to agree. I think Embiid is a sneaky pick, but he does have to play, I think, more like 70 games.
Yes.
He has to play games. He has to go for MVP. We'll see a different Joel Embiid this year.
All right, guys, let's focus back into the Western Conference, because I want to bring up a guy's name who went to 8 NBA Finals and last year didn't sniff the playoffs at all, LeBron James. How likely is it, guys, that LeBron recharges the batteries and all of a sudden he's ready for an MVP run?
You know, I think that's a good point. LeBron James probably hasn't been mentioned very little in this entire show today, and he's still LeBron James. You know, I think the issue there is that you need a good story to win an MVP. And for Anthony Davis coming into LA, I think if anyone's going to win the MVP this year, it's going to be his teammate, Anthony Davis, because of the storyline factor. But hey, LeBron James puts up the biggest numbers of his career, I think he's going to take it.
You know, when they officially said LeBron James is our point guard, that changed. I mean, granted, he's that for most teams he's on anyway. But now you're seeing him start at that position, and everything goes through him, and he's going to make Anthony Davis a better player than we've already seen. And Anthony Davis is terrific as is. So I think you're right. I think Anthony has a better chance to win the MVP than LeBron. Although LeBron, again, so many miles on those legs, but he just keeps going.
There's another guy playing in Los Angeles who won an MVP in the NBA Finals last year. Anyone going to mention Kawhi Leonard seriously as an MVP
But this is the NBA. It's wide open. There's so many teams that can win the title or win, you know, the best seed in their conference that, you know, a lot of players are going to be upset that we're not talking about them enough this year.
What about me? What about you?
And Dame Lillard's another name that could win MVP this year if they shock the world and win the #1 seed. So I think Giannis actually, I don't think he's going to do back-to-back because he had the most grueling summer of any NBA player, you know, launching the shoe, then going to the FIBA World Cup in China and doing all that while going back to Greece, it is a crazy summer for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Can he hold up for 82 games?
All right, guys, you guys have mentioned a few of those players, and you have said there are a lot more that we can talk about. KJ and Brian are going to do that. They're going to look at 3 guys who have been MVPs in the past, gang.
All right, Brian, let's talk about some other MVP candidates out west. We've got 3 former MVPs, but let's start with Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. With KD gone, Klay Thompson expected to miss the entire season. He's back to being the #1 option. Many are expecting him to be in line for his 3rd MVP trophy, and he's got a new backcourt mate in D'Angelo Russell. They both excel in the pick and roll. How do they complement each other in this offense?
Well, I think they're going to complement each other well because D'Angelo is so good in the pick and roll game that it's going to allow Steph to play a lot off the ball. But when he is in pick and roll situations, they're going to have to pick their poison to stop Steph. And if they do that and commit the defense to the paint, it's going to allow for D'Angelo Russell to knock down open perimeter shots, which he's more than capable of doing when you give him those kind of looks. Here, the defense slips up. They don't communicate well. Steph, once he shows where he's most dangerous once he gives the ball up. He never stops moving. It's perpetual motion, and that's what makes it so hard for him to guard. Here, you see D'Angelo, who's playing with a lot of confidence coming off an all-star season last year in Brooklyn, coming off the pick and roll, selling the defense with his eyes. The defender here overcommits and tries to cheat and beat Steph out on the pick. He's able to reverse and get a backdoor layup. And so that's where I think you're going to see Steph be able to excel and play off D'Angelo. And in here, Steph returns the favor. You see Amari Spellman rolling to the basket. They choose to stop the roller. It allows the throwback to D'Angelo Russell, who I just said is more than capable of knocking down those perimeter shots.
Yeah, Steph Curry is so good away from the ball. D'Angelo Russell's going to learn a lot from him. And obviously, they're going to need other guys to step up. When you do the pick and roll, you get the double team. You need the rim runner and you need shooters on the outside.
Exactly, and with the addition of Willie Cauley-Stein, Marquise Chris, and how he's played in the preseason, they're going to be that dynamic role that we used to see with JaVale McGee. And then you're going to have to pick your poison. Take away the roller. If you do that, it's going to allow throwback passes to D'Angelo Russell. If you don't, it's going to allow them to roll and get dunks at the basket.
All right, let's talk about the Rockets because they keep sniffing an NBA title, can't quite get to the finals. So now they have reunited James Harden with Russell Westbrook. Mike D'Antoni has his hands full with these two because, as we know in Houston, they like iso ball a lot. So far, it hasn't worked in terms of winning championships, and you've got 2 of the same. This is actually starting last season with Chris Paul, and this is what happened.
And you see this whole possession, Chris Paul basically standing in the corner with his hands on his shorts while James Harden is going one-on-one. Here, Harden returns the favor and just stands in one spot. Not only Harden, but everybody else around the perimeter watching Chris Paul go one-on-one. And that's tough sledding. And you can get through the regular season doing that because of their extraordinary abilities. But when it gets to the playoffs and the team locks in on you for 7 straight games, it's hard to beat somebody like that. Here again, you see Westbrook now doing the same thing that Chris Paul was doing last year, standing around on the perimeter. And James Harden, once again, he's capable of being able to score and have really, really big nights in the NBA, but I think it takes its toll as it gets later on in the season. This is what I think the teams are going to do with Russell Westbrook. They're going to sit back and they're going to dare him to shoot. He was a 29% shooter from three-point land. He's going to have to improve on that because those are the positions that he's going to be in with the style of play that the Rockets play. But I just don't. He has the ability to be able to go one-on-one and get buckets, but that's exerting a lot of energy, possession after possession, when you just have those two trying to create for themselves.
And he plays at 1 speed, which is a lot faster than James Harden wants to play. It leads to turnovers as well. This doesn't seem like a very good fit.
Well, we'll see. They're going to get out and transition a little bit more. It's going to take them some time to get to refamiliarize themselves with one another and pick and choose when they're going to pick their spots. Mm-hmm. But I think that, their talent will help carry them through the regular season. Like I said, in the playoffs, when teams can hone in on what they do, it's going to be tough if they continue to try to play like that.
Yeah, a lot of talent in Houston. We'll see how it all works out. All right, so those former MVPs are used to making the playoffs, but these teams were on the outside looking in. So which team is primed to make the jump besides the Lakers? You responded to Tom's poll and said the Chicago Bulls. It's pretty tight there with the Kings and Heat also in the picture. All right, let's head to Sacramento to talk about one of those teams that is trying to make some noise out west. To Golden One Center we go and bring in our Kings insider James Ham. All right, James, obviously it's been 13 years since the Kings last made the postseason. What is it going to take for them to be playoff bound this year?
You know, I think if they play Kings basketball, they push the tempo, they play fast with De'Aaron Fox as the head of the snake, they have a very good opportunity to make the playoffs this season. It's been a long stretch, but the Kings had plenty of holes last season, and Vlade Divac went out and he filled those holes in free agency. He brought in Corey Joseph to back up the point guard spot. He brought in Dwayne Dedmon to provide a three-point shooting, shot-blocking big man. I think they made a lot of nice moves during the offseason, and this is as deep as the Kings have been in at least a decade.
There's also locked up Buddy Hield to a contract extension. He's obviously partnered with their floor general. You mentioned him, the face of the franchise, De'Aaron Fox. These two are a lot of fun to watch. Young, exciting players. But for Fox, he's in year 3 now. Can he take that step to superstar status?
You know, he's right there. He will at least take a step to all-star level this season. I don't know if he can get all the way to superstar status, but look, at 21 years old, he's got plenty of opportunity to improve here. His agent has said that he wants to see him average 23, 24 points per game this season. If he can do that and average 9 or 10 assists, he's right there in superstar conversation.
And the man, of course, in charge of getting this young, up-and-coming squad to be a threat in the West is new head coach Luke Walton. How will his system and style of play really fit this team and its roster, James?
You know, last season, Dave Yeager did a great job of turning up the tempo. The grit and grind system went out the window, and they really pushed the tempo here in Sacramento. Luke Walton, this is his style of basketball. So you're taking a guy who already plays his style, and you're just giving him the perfect roster. Last season, the Los Angeles Lakers shot 80 more three-point attempts than the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings made 80 more than the Lakers under Luke Walton. So now he not only does he have the speed of De'Aaron Fox, but he's got some of the best shooters around, not just Buddy Hield, but guys like Nemanja Bjelica, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Harrison Barnes, Trevor Ariza they add to the mix. Dwayne Dedmon shot over 38% from 3 at the center position. So I think this is a perfect mix of not only speed and quickness, but also shooting, and Luke Walton's got to be loving what he sees on the court.
They can score some points. Don't sleep on Sacramento. This team is going to be fun to watch. They open up down in Phoenix against the Suns. James Ham, we appreciate the time. Now for another up-and-coming team, let's go back across the studio to Jim Cosmore.
All right, KJ, thanks very much. I like the Kings in the West, but in the East, this is my pick as the up-and-comer, the Chicago Bulls. Let's welcome in Casey Johnson. He's the Bulls insider at NBC Sports Chicago. KC, I like this as a pick. I think this is a fun team, up and coming. But what's it going to take for the Bulls to make a jump as a playoff team in the East?
Well, Jim, it's going to take a lot. I mean, this is a 22-win team last season that still is, even with some nice offseason additions, the second youngest team in the NBA. So I think it's pretty widely accepted that they had a pretty strong offseason with their additions and revamping of the roster, but basically all those additions need to hit. So you need to see Tomas Satoransky prove that he can be a full-time starter at that point guard position. You need to see Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen take a step towards stardom. You need to see Otto Porter Jr. stay healthy enough to contribute at that small forward position. And then you need to see Wendell Carter Jr. hit the two-way potential that the organization believes he has, but has only shown in limited stretches because of injuries to this point. And Kobe White, obviously, as a first-round pick, needs to bring you something off the bench. So a lot needs to go right, but they are kind of shaping up as a sexy pick to make a big jump from 22 wins to the playoffs.
You know, Casey, it's interesting you mentioned Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen as guys who need to take the next step. What's Jim Boylen doing with these guys, and what position is he putting them on the floor in order to make that next step?
Well, Zach is clearly a guy on a mission. I mean, I've been around him since he's obviously come over in that Jimmy Butler trade from the Timberwolves, and he's just got a real nice edge to him. He's really motivated to make the All-Star game for many reasons. It's in Chicago at the United Center. He feels like he gets overlooked too often when conversation turns to the game's elite players. I had a conversation with him last year in Charlotte, right around the time that the Charlotte hosted the All-Star game, and he said, look at my stats compared to Kemba Walker's. What's different? He's clearly frustrated that he gets overlooked, and he averaged 23 points in 24 minutes in the preseason on ridiculous 59% shooting. So
Jim Boylan is utilizing a more up-tempo system where the three-point shot is more emphasized, and that obviously behooves Lauri Markkanen as well, who's not only a matchup nightmare, but also a guy who can obviously go outside and hit that three-point shot.
You know, last season, KC, you look at Carter, Dunn, Markkanen, all these guys missed significant time because of injuries. How much is injury a factor and a question mark for the Bulls going into this year?
It seems, Jim, like it is every year with this franchise going back to Derrick Rose's left ACL tear in 2012. This team has just not been able to stay healthy. It's something that frustrates management to no end because they're pretty unrelated freak injuries. I mean, you look at a guy like Wendell Carter Jr. last year, a real promising rookie season, played 44 games, showed that potential to be a really nice two-way player, and then trips over Tyson Chandler's foot in a road game at Los Angeles and breaks his fall with his thumb and is headed to thumb surgery. I mean, you can't prepare for those things. So it's a storyline that deserves watching. I think the Bulls are making some right steps along those lines. They're already talking about load management with Otto Porter Jr., who's battled nagging injuries throughout his career. He's critical to this team's success. But Carter already missed 3 preseason games with a bruised tailbone. So, you know, it's going to be a storyline forever with this franchise. And obviously management hopes it's one they put in the past.
All right, Casey, I hope the Bulls get things going. Then they do make a playoff run. Thanks for your insights into this. We'll follow the Bulls with the My Teams app. NBA Tip-Off show continues. Let's stay west, guys. We heard some say the Sacramento Kings could be that team that makes the jump. Is there anyone else that opens your eyes in the Western Conference that could make the playoff leap?
The Lakers.
Going on the limb.
No, you know, the Dallas Mavericks, it all depends on Kristaps Porzingis' knee. They've got an amazing young duo in Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. I think that's the name that I'm watching, is if Porzingis can be the guy that he was for the Knicks and be that 25-point scorer for them, they're going to make the leap into the playoffs. But, man, the Lakers are going to be pretty good, too.
Yeah. Of the teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, obviously the Lakers. And Dallas is the one that's getting a lot of talk. You know, people, and they have those two guys that are special. I think what happens with the rest of the roster will dictate that, because you need Kristaps to be great, but you also need some consistency from the rest of the guys. If they're good, they can probably get there because they have a terrific coach in Rick Carlisle.
And for the Kings in the Western Conference, a lot of the new faces are going to have to mesh. We'll see if they can make the jump. They surprised some people with 39 wins last year. Yeah. They're not going to surprise anybody this year. Teams are going to be ready. That's what it looks like in the Western Conference. How about back east? Brian, Mark, what do you see? What teams could jump into the playoffs?
Well, we want to focus on a team that made the playoffs, but we both feel like this team could really improve. Remember, guys, it's the Eastern Conference, so even teams with heartbeats actually make the playoffs. So in the East, who do you like taking another step forward?
I think the Orlando Magic will take a gigantic step forward this year. They bring Nick Vujicic, one of the premier defenses in the league, and they bought into a system that helped them get to the playoffs, but I think they're going to try to fight for that 4th or 5th seed. Look for Orlando Magic to make a big jump.
Are you concerned that they don't have the shooting with Aaron Gordon and Jonathan Isaac, who we think is a future star in this league, but still, you have to be able to make shots in this league?
Agree with you. Evan Fournier is looking for a big season. He's looking to come out. Disappointing performance finish for him and for his country, France, this past summer. He's looking to come out, and to me, he's their sole legitimate three-point threat. And with him getting going, along with Nick Vujicic, Aaron Gordon, and don't forget the former #1 pick, Marco Fultz, look for big things out of him this year. So I think they got a good chance.
Yeah, two teams I really like. I like Atlanta. They're a very sexy pick out east because the way they finished last year. Trae Young is a fun player to watch. They got a lot of shooting around him. Another team you should keep an eye out on is the Indiana Pacers. Very solid core. Had struggles last year scoring in the playoffs, but they're banking on Oladipo coming back, and Oladipo is that guy in the Eastern Conference. Can make buckets when offenses go sideways. So, we threw out a few teams, but I feel like those 3 teams are teams that you should be watching out for. Teams that are looking to take steps forward. But I like Atlanta a lot.
Yeah,
guys.
Let's check in on another team out east that's undergone major roster turnover this offseason. To the nation's capital we go. My good buddy Chris Miller, longtime Wizards host and sideline reporter for NBCS Washington. All right, Chris, Bradley Beal, they locked him down to a long-term contract extension. Does this solidify him as the face of the franchise now, and can you wipe his name off the trade market for good?
Absolutely. It's great to talk to you again, Kelly. Yes, the face of the franchise right now is Bradley Beal, with John Wall being out for the better part of this season. Now, they haven't said John is done for the whole year, but when you're coming off an Achilles like this, clearly they want to be patient. But Bradley Beal has done nothing but prove why he could be the face of the franchise, or at least share it with John, with what he has done in the past couple of years, with John missing half of each of the last 2 years. Brad is a franchise guy because of the way he has conducted himself on the court. Last year, averaging 25, 5, and 5, and making it to his second consecutive playoff appearance. What you saw, second All-Star appearance. What you've seen from Brad is he can galvanize his team to kind of follow his lead. And this year, this will be probably his biggest challenge when you consider 8 of their top players are under the age of 22. So Brad, being that grizzled 8-year veteran, will really have to be tops of the scouting report night in and night out, Kelly.
Obviously, with John Wall expected to miss the season with that Achilles surgery, he's got a new backcourt mate in Isaiah Thomas. After a couple of rough years kind of bouncing around, how much does IT have left?
Well, Wizards fans remember the 53 points he dropped on them in Game 2 of the playoffs 2 years ago. That series went 7 games, and IT was absolutely unguardable. Now, as you said, he's gone through some hip, problems, and, he just came off of surgery on his thumb, and he's practiced the last couple of days. Pretty much missed all of the preseason, but the hope is any version of that IT from 2 years ago the Wizards would take, because, again, he closed out their series and season with that performance. But for Isaiah, he's looking to try to recoup maybe some of that skill set that he had when he would always motion at his wrist that it was IT time. If they can get that version of Isaiah Thomas, the sky's the limit really with this team, because of the fact you have another closer in Bradley Beal.
All right, a lot of new faces for this Wizards team. Any chance they can compete for the playoffs this season out east?
It's going to be difficult, Kelly. As you know, you don't win a lot of games in this league when you have a lot of young players. But the fact that you do have, like I said, Bradley Beal as your guy, and you have Isaiah Thomas, hopefully he can get back to that 2017 IT. It's going to be difficult because the East is loaded. It's very top-heavy. But some of those teams that are going to be competing for 8, 7, and 6, they're really good. And I think they have a great core of veterans and young pieces. So it's going to be hard for the Wizards. I think what they're going to do is they're going to measure their success by keeping the veterans healthy and getting some development out of these younger players.
All right. Always good to talk to you, Chris. I know you're happy. Basketball is back. Enjoy the season.
No, I can't wait. Great talking to you, KJ.
All right. You too.
You're watching. NBA. On my team.
My team.
On my team. On my team.
All right, here we go. The big question of the hour. Who is going to dethrone the Toronto Raptors and win this year's NBA title? Obviously, the Clippers, Lakers, and Bucks have all been the odds-on favorites, depending on which Vegas book you're going to. But look at what the fans said. They picked the Clippers over the Lakers and Bucks, but 62% said another team. Brian Shaw, who rejoins us now. Okay, so what do you say? Pressure's on. You get the first pick. Who's winning it all this year?
I'm going with the Clippers.
The Clippers.
I believe, that old saying, defense wins championships. When you look at Richard Sherman when he played for the Legion of Boom in Seattle, the Monsters of the Midway in football with the Chicago Bears, this Clippers team has a chance to be that kind of defensive team. They can lock you down, and Paul George and Kawhi can shut down complete sides of the floor with a pesky defender like Patrick Beverly, harassing the ball carrier. So I think that the Clippers, because they also can do it on the offensive end as well.
Yeah, I thought you might throw us a curveball or something. I mean, no one's even talked about the Denver Nuggets, your former team, but continuity could be some kind of a factor out there for the Nuggets. But he's going with the LA Clippers over the Lakers. Let's go out east now, check in with Brian and Mark to get their picks for this year's NBA championship. Guys?
Now, if you stay tuned to the show, you know where we're leaning, but we're going to say it anyways because it's on the list. So, Mark, Who do you got for winning the championship this year?
76ers, man. 76 are going to do incredible things. But when they meet up in that Western Conference, it's going to be interesting. But I think the 76ers is built for a championship run. Anything less than that is failure in my book.
In the Eastern Conference Finals, you have the Bucks. Is this a two-horse race? Or, which I'm going to give you my pick, I think the Celtics are actually going to figure out a way to beat the Bucks, lose to the Sixers.
No way. No way. No way. No way. I don't know what you drinking. I don't want none of that.
I'm keeping it real the whole day. I think the Sixers are the best team in the NBA. I think they have the best starting lineup. But my Celtics, I do believe that they can beat the Milwaukee Bucks.
Listen, I think Boston can't even get past the Pacers. So don't even put them in the category or getting anywhere near the 76 and the Bucks. They're nowhere near that. No way. That's small ball. They're too young. Jason Tatum is not ready to take that next step, not yet. I really believe they have nothing for these powerhouses in the Sixers, the Bucks, and even the Pacers.
Who do you have the Bucks beating in the final? I mean, I'm sorry, who do you have the Sixers beating in the final?
I got the Sixers beating the Pacers. Oh, in the finals. Clippers.
Yes.
Yeah. They're a video game.
It's very difficult to bet against the Clippers because of their defense, but also the Sixers and their defense. I am leaning towards the Philadelphia 76ers winning the championship, and Embiid will once again, after the season, drink cookies and cream Oreo milkshakes and have Taco Bell.
He won't be trying that hot chip challenge again, I'll tell you that.
All right, you had it from here out east. We'll send it back to you guys.
Man, hot and heavy. Contested there in the Eastern Conference. It's not that way out east, so everybody gets along. We all play nice in the sandbox. Tom and Monty, time for you guys. Tom, I'll start with you. Who do you like in the NBA Finals? Who's going to win it?
Well, I was just going to say they might be the best duo in the NBA, those two guys.
Yes, I know.
No, I think it's going to be the Clippers. They have the continuity and the additions of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. You know, the Lakers won 37 games last year and added AD, have a new coach. Yeah. The Clippers won 48 games and then added 2 stars.
And
so I'm going the Clippers.
They gave the Warriors heck in the postseason, too. They made the Warriors work for that 6-game series. But you've got a championship coach in Doc Rivers. You've got a championship MVP in Kawhi Leonard. You've got Paul George. Again, that Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Patrick Beverley trio, that fourth quarter's against the Clippers, good luck scoring against that group because it ain't going to be easy.
All right, when I take a look at the NBA this year, here's who I have in the finals. Ready? Milwaukee out of the East. But out of the West, I like both Utah and Denver. Denver was a 2-seed last year. Nobody's talking about the Denver Nuggets right now. And the Utah Jazz are a really good team, a 5-seed that won 50 games last year. So I know the sexy picks are down in L.A., but I really like Utah and Denver in the West.
I'm glad you brought up Utah because getting Mike Conley Jr. is, perennially the most underrated player in the NBA, has yet to be an all-star, and we're gonna change what we think about Mike Conley and the Utah Jazz. Just give it a couple months in this season, you'll see why.
No, I like that. And you're right about Denver, and Kelly mentioned this, that there's the continuity factor. They didn't do a whole, and they're adding again Michael Porter Jr. Everybody's raving about Michael Porter Jr. So let's see if he's as good as I'm hearing. Denver's going to be scary good because they have a terrific top 6 or 7 guys on that team.
You know, the one team I think a lot of people would like to see get to a final, so at least deep in the playoffs, is back in the Eastern Conference because of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Is he a player who can carry everyone across the goal line and get them to a finals? I know that you have concerns about what his offseason was like.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what the Greek national team did this summer. It was not pretty, and I don't know why he was over there. Oh, yeah, he had to put out a shoe in China. So I think one of the things that I'm looking at for him is just the fatigue factor. He said this, this going into the deep playoff last year was grueling for him. Then he goes into the summer with a breathless travel schedule. That's my big concern, Jim, is it's not just about the pieces around him and losing Malcolm Brogdon, but just the shoulder, the burden that he has to shoulder.
Then, Monty, let me ask you about a team of the Western Conference, because as always, the Lakers have had the big, bright lights on them. But recently, in recent years, the lights aren't shining on the Lakers any longer. Now LeBron is there, and he's got a running mate in the brow. Is it now the new sexy team? And are they the Beatles again? Are the Lakers one more time?
I'm not giving them quite that yet because LeBron is, again, he's terrific. He's great. But LeBron isn't what he was 6, 7 years ago, where he's running up and down the court and doing everything at both ends. He's not doing much on defense at all. He's handling the ball, which is great for them. But I'm not giving him that much. They're not the new Beatles team. AD doesn't fit that mold. He's a different kind of guy, but he's a terrific player. So I just don't think – I think they're going to be a championship contender. But I look at their roster, and I don't see those two guys carrying the roster all the way to the end.
All right, do you buy my theory? LeBron didn't have a playoffs last year. He's more rested this season.
I mean, yeah, that's a big factor here is whether he's going to be able to, go deep in the playoffs and lead a championship team. I think LeBron James is going to be rested. The question is, for me, Anthony Davis, can he be a 100-game player? We talk about Draymond Green, there's 16 win teams. We'll see if the Lakers are that.
Yeah, AD has missed an average of 15 games a year for his entire career. So let's see where he goes with that. And LeBron's going to need some load management.
All right, there's a lot going on in the NBA. It is wide open, like we've never seen it in the recent past. It should be a fun year. Thanks so much for watching on the My Teams app. Hey, you've got the My Teams app. Tell a friend. The best NBA coverage with Tom and Monty and Kelly and Brian and Mark and Casey and Jamie is on the My Teams app.